What's up, guys? Today's episode is sponsored by Turn the Page Editing. Whether you are looking for an editor or a writer, they will help you with your latest endeavor as beautiful and well-written as possible. Turn the Page offers a number of services that include general editing and proofing, copywriting and editing, and manuscript editing and proofing, which I can speak personally is a lifesaver. Visit turnthepageediting.com to get started. Remember to put too many words in the subject line. Today's episode is also sponsored by LuLaRoe. LuLaRoe is a clothing company that provides comfortable, fashionable, and unique clothing for everyone. The famous soft, buttery leggings are only the beginning. LuLaRoe also has an amazing line of women's dresses, skirts, tunics, and t-shirts. You will get 20% off your next order when you put too many words in the subject line. Go to facebook.com/groups/LuLaRoe Rebecca Clark VIP. All right, let's do the show. What's up, guys? I'm Jayme Bedingfield, and you are listening to my podcast, Too Many Words. Thanks for tuning in. And if you aren't already, go ahead and click on the subscribe button because, that helps what I'm doing here. And, I started Too Many Words back when The Highly Capable was published through Book Trope, and me and my book manager had come together with some ideas for just, reaching out to readers and expanding and all that. And Too Many Words was one of the ideas that popped up. And even after Book Trope closed its doors and The Highly Capable went off shelves, I just kept the show going because every week there's more downloads than the week before. And, that a big thanks to you guys. That wouldn't be happening without you. You guys tune in and you're telling people about it and they're tuning in. So I appreciate it. I do. And I love hearing from you guys and hearing your stories and obstacles and all that. It's always great to hear that I'm helping out. Now, I'm pretty excited about the show I have today. I had a lot of fun putting it together and talking to today's guest. I have an awesome talk with writer Myke Cole, and if you're not familiar with his books, you should fix that because they're awesome. The Shadow Op series is probably one of my favorite series, and it's awesome. And he's got the Reawakening trilogy and also the Empty Throne series, which will be coming soon from Tor. And Myke gets cooler. He is also part of the cast of CBS's new reality series, Hunted, as part of an elite team of fugitive hunters. And that premieres January 22nd on CBS. So definitely tune into that. I know I will be. I'm excited. But, so, my talk with Myke will be coming up in a little bit. I have a little bit of shouting out and general complaining to do, but not too much longer. I had the privilege of getting an early copy of LADYCASTLE, which is the new comic coming from Boom, and it is written by the fantastic Delilah S. Dawson, and the art is done by Ashley A. Woods. And I'm not even blowing smoke here when I say it, but this is my new favorite comic. It's one of my favorite things to wind down with is a good comic. And this LADYCASTLE is a gender flipped Arthurian piece of awesomeness. So definitely check that out. You can, and it is officially released January 25th. I also want to shout out to Richard Kadrey. This is the week that Lucifer, he's taken the story over, and the first issue of Lucifer in Kadrey's hands is out now. So definitely check that out. I'm excited to dive in. I haven't read it yet, but that is some plans I have for the weekend. So yeah, those are my shout outs and thoughts on comics. How's it going with everybody? What's what's on your plate? What are you knocking around in your mind? What kind of projects are bringing you joy, causing you pain? It's, I don't pretend, I talk about writing a lot. I write about writing. I think about writing. I write. And, I don't pretend to be an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not. Sometimes I feel just completely clueless. But I will say this. I am learning the importance of walking away from a project. Getting that time away, draft it, whether it's a story or a novel or whatever, put the words down, don't worry about the language, and then walk away and do something else, whether that's another project. In my case, it usually is. I have to, the only way I can ignore a project is by consuming myself with another project. But that time away is important. Then you go back, you read it, you revise it, you step away again. And it's so hard to convince myself to take that time away, because here I am, and I'm sure a lot of you know or are familiar with this feeling as well, is you're trying to make something, and you're trying to make something out of nothing. So it's hard to stop, even when you need to, because you haven't, reached your goal yet. And maybe, breaking up the goals and making them more milestones rather than this big end result that just, it's not immediate. I am rereading a draft, and I'm figuring out what this draft means to me and what it needs to become. And I'm also doing that with a few shorts. I sent a few out, and now I'm going over others. And, it's a fine line between listening to your gut and knowing what needs to be changed and just kind of giving in to that inner critic word snob that is telling you you're not good enough. And I am talking about a voice in my head, not a particular person in the real world. But, so I guess I'm in a mood, and I unloaded a little bit, but, that's what I do. But yes, so make it to a comic book store is basically what I'm saying to you. And if you are in the throes of creating and building your career, I say be patient with yourself, be patient with the process. And if this is truly, this is your gut saying this is what you're doing, this is the path that you took, then you keep chugging. And remember to take breaks, because those are important. The mind needs to fill up, and separating yourself emotionally also helps. Now, I mean, from the project, like, take the guts of it away a little bit and look at it from a reader's standpoint. So, yes. But without any more rambling, let's get to my talk with Myke. Like I said, I had a lot of fun talking to him. He is a really cool guy with great things to say. Hey, Myke, how's it going?
Hey, Jayme, thanks for having me.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it. I'm a big fan of your words. Your books are awesome.
Oh, thank you. That's very gratifying to hear. I appreciate it.
I love superpowers, and I love to see different things done with them. So it's very cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if you grew up with the X-Men or not. I'm guessing you probably did.
Yes. Reading my dad, actually, he owned a cards and comic shop, and after school I spent it there. And there are certain titles, Dark Phoenix Saga, when it crossed my path, pretty much just changed my life.
Best dad ever. That's like the best family. I wish your dad could have adopted me when I was a kid. That would have been awesome growing up in a comic store. I don't know if you remember, for me, the iconic X-Men issue that whenever I think of the X-Men, I always think of as the Exit Cyclops episode where after Jean Grey dies, or he's leaving and he has a duffel bag over his shoulder and a pink background. That will forever be like the iconic X-Men issue to me. But the reason I bring it up is that if you see, I've been accused of having X-Men influences in my books, and the answer is unabashedly yes, yes, absolutely. Those influences are bald-faced and deliberate, and if you're noticing them, that means I've done my job right.
No, definitely. I mean, you know, and on the cover of some of them, it says, you know, Black Hawk Down meet X-Men. But even like as you're reading the words, like especially like when I was first introduced to the first one, I was reading it. I'm like, this guy loves X-Men. That's awesome.
He does. It's funny. I was a Marvel purist, I think, for my early comic book buying days, and I came to DC late in the game. I actually I sort of came to DC, started getting really into the various permutations of Batman and Wonder Woman, and then the New 52 reboot came just a couple years back, and that kind of soured me on DC. Except now, they seem to be making some real inroads in the TV space with Arrow in particular, and I think they moved to LA to kind of, you know, put the I guess give momentum to that move.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely, you know, strictly speaking, between like Marvel and DC, I would say that I lean towards more Marvel, though I love Batman, especially when he's in his, you know, his darkest form. I like the torture there.
Year Zero. Year Zero is the penultimate Batman. Actually, I have yet to read a bad Vertigo comic. I usually advise people that, like, nobody cares about label, right? People only care about content, you know, and it's not like people go out and look for only, you know, Bane books or only Del Rey books. You know, you go by the author. One of the rare exceptions, if not the only exception, is Vertigo comics. I've never picked up a Vertigo comic and not been wowed by it. It's almost like TV that HBO does. Mm-hmm. It's never bad.
Well, have you seen Westworld? Are you watching Westworld then?
No, I gave myself a brief break from writing to do some creative recharging and was binging on TV. And I did Stranger Things, which, as you know, was amazing. Yes. I did American Horror Story, the first season, about halfway through the second. I did some of Vikings, but I get really hung up on historical minutia. And Vikings has so many little inaccuracies in it that if you know something about the real Ragnar Lodbrok, or, I mean, there was no real Ragnar Lodbrok, but at least the various legends that create the composite that is known as Ragnar Lodbrok, it really threw me out of the story and I couldn't get into it. And then I watched the first season of Daredevil, which is great. And I'm watching the second season now, and I'm almost done. And now I'm getting back into the Clone Wars animated series.
Yep.
And my immediate reaction to that is, geez, man, why didn't George Lucas just take this story instead of the stories he used for episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the theaters? And then we could have had an original trilogy that didn't suck.
The thought has crossed my mind with that one as well. It's
the writing's fantastic. It's great in that series.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I'm just getting off of a TV binge watching myself, and I was struggling a little bit with Westworld, but I'm holding my hope, I think.
Struggling why? I've heard like universal good things. What's not working for you?
You know, it's not what's not working for me. It's my fear of I don't know if you've ever watched Lost.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I'm not convinced that there's going to be, like, because there's things that are purposely confusing, and I'm just not sure that they're going to come together.
No. So you use Lost as an example. My favorite example of that is X-Files, where the story just twists and turns, and there's always this promise that there's going to be an end, like a satisfying resolution to everything. And then after a few seasons, you realize that even the writers don't know, and they're just trying to string you along as long as they can.
Yes.
To get as many episodes as they can out of it, and no one has any idea where the heck this thing's going.
Yes, totally. Whereas, like, on the other side of that, like Game of Thrones, there's so much payoff that it makes your head want to explode.
Right. This is the wonderful thing about Stranger Things, and Daredevil to an extent, is that is that it's very clear that the story has an arc that's laid out in advance, and that moves across the number of episodes that are needed, so that before they even started shooting episode 1, they knew that it was going to be, 10 or 12 episodes, and you were going to have a complete story with a satisfying resolution at the end.
Yes.
And, yeah, so I totally understand what you're saying. I didn't know that Westworld was like that. Have you seen the original with Yul Brynner?
No, I have not.
That's worth your time, too. That's a really cool one. A little dated, but very cool.
Cool. Well, two show examples that come to my top of my head when we're talking about like strong arcs and good payoff. I just finished watching Candle Cove, Channel Zero Candle Cove, and the OA.
There goes your Roddy.
Yep, there's my Roddy snoring.
Super cute. No, I haven't seen Candle Cove.
Oh wow.
What is it?
It is creepy television at its best, and the writing is just so good that like I watched the whole season, and I was just slack-jawed at the end. The resolution, I was like, wow. I want to say 6 or 8. I'm getting confused because I watched the OA too on Netflix, and that's 8.
So is that good too? Because I'm hearing amazing things about the OA.
The OA is incredible.
Okay, I'm writing this down. The OA and Candle Cove. I'm actually going to watch. Is this Netflix or Amazon Prime?
The OA is Netflix.
Okay.
And Channel Zero Candle Cove is the Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay. Is it Channel Zero Candle Cove or just Candle Cove?
Channel Zero Candle Cove.
So what are these shows about?
Channel Zero, it takes sibling bond and everything that's hard and terrifying about being a child, and just takes that with a little bit of like Lovecraftian essence, because it's not like full-blown Lovecraft, but you can see the inspiration there. And
so it's dark as hell.
Oh, it's so dark. It's so creepy.
I love dark.
Me too. Me too.
So what about the OA?
Oh, wow. Best magical realism show that I've ever seen. And I would say the elements of dealing with mental illness with magic, with the fact that anything can be possible if you believe in it, and the format there with that one, wow.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. No, I highly recommend both of those.
Yeah, everybody's been saying great things. I really feel like TV has leveled up in a major way from when we were kids. I mean, I grew up with Alf and Greatest American Hero and Three's Company and like sort of sitcoms and the old Airwolf and Superman and Knight Rider and all of these sort of episodic shows that, again, weren't really interested in a story outside of an individual episode. There wasn't a heck of a lot to keep you coming back other than the routine and regularity, the sort of comfort food aspect of watching TV.
Yeah.
And now I get more out of watching TV series than I do out of getting movies.
Same here.
It's really amazing.
Yeah, well, it's almost like I would say like the time we're in right now for TV is like the equivalent of like what the 80s were for the movie industry. Like there's going to be like things like as far as like the payoff too, because like even like the serial dramas 10 years ago, like you would take the same tired storyline and drag it across like 6 seasons.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't remember.
Oh no. I'm such a bad friend. Like I derail conversations and you lose your thought. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. First of all, I'm like queen of I'm going to interrupt you with the thought that you just gave me by what you said. So no worries.
Okay, good. Have you ever heard NPR does a show called The Big Broadcast? Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, but no, I haven't checked into it.
It's basically exactly what it sounds like. It's the old radio dramas that were very popular at the time that, War of the Worlds, came out when people really thought that Martians were invading the Earth.
Yeah.
It's the golden age of radio, which I guess was like, what, the 30s or maybe even earlier? I'm not sure. But
I think, like the late 20s, early 30s, I'd say.
Right. So you listen to these, and when they have, and there really are full-scale audio dramas with ensemble casts and incredible scores and great Foley effects, and you really are transported in listening to them. And I remember, and like now it's kind of this boutique retro thing to listen to these on NPR, but you know, I'm thinking that, like, as I sit here watching these TV shows, this episodic format that I had kind of written off as never, you know, being as glamorous or as competently done or as fine an art form as Hollywood, as television, excuse me, as movies were. And now look how quickly the paradigm is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like every time I listen to the big broadcast, I now, because I have this experience with TV versus movies, I'm kind of sitting there thinking, you know, maybe I should take this radio drama thing seriously. Who knows what could happen with media?
Definitely. Well, I mean, and there's people are doing some interesting stuff right now with podcast and fiction storytelling for sure.
Oh God, there's so many good ones. I'm sure you've heard Pacific Northwest Stories. They have Tanis, they have the Black Tapes. Those meander a bit more than I'm hugely comfortable with. But they're still really, really good and definitely worth your listeners' time. And there's also Archive 81.
Yes.
And it's interesting that these sort of Creepypasta and No Sleep, which were these Reddit, I think, or at least message board subthreads where people were just doing fan fiction or amateur stories, horror stories, just to entertain other people on the boards, that developed these huge followings. And some of them are excellent and became the basis for these really popular podcasts. It's amazing.
It is really cool.
All this reminds me that I spend way too much time watching movies and TV and listening to podcasts when I should be working.
Well, I think it's part of it. I mean, it's important. You got to fill your brain up in order for, you know, like I finished this huge draft before Thanksgiving and like my whole brain was just like done and I felt like a lost puppy just wandering around. So it was like I needed to go and like just fill my brain back up with inspiration.
Yeah, and congrats on that big draft. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
I know what a relief that must be for you, and also terrifying.
Well, it was an initial release where it was like, oh, I did, it's awesome, I did it, and then it's like, okay, now what is this?
Yeah, now you've got it.
And the editing phase.
Right, that's exactly right. But I mean, it is still finishing any large body of work. Even if you produce what you think is shit. Am I allowed to curse on here?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Even producing stuff that you think is shit is still a major achievement. I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time dancing around spiking the football, but I would definitely, you know, take a moment because it is something that most people don't do. The vast majority of writers are what I call writers who don't. And I can't take credit for that term. And I got it from Ron Collins, who's another working writer. But the act of starting a project and staying head down on it until it's finished, even if it sucks, which all first drafts do, is it puts you ahead of 99.9% of the people out there, and that you're not just talking about art, you're making art.
Yeah.
Really that's something huge.
Yeah, and I mean, even like you gotta work it out because like you can't fix what isn't there. So you got to put a whole bunch of stuff down. That reminds me, because I read a blog post of yours that was talking about stepping away from it and going back and taking your time. Like giving space, like after you do a draft, you need to walk away from it before you can like really do anything to it. And that's like a big thing to learn.
It is so hard to do. So I have a reputation for being this incredibly disciplined guy with an amazing work ethic, and that reputation is partially true, I guess, but it's something I've actually had to adjust because it's exactly that. Is that kind of work ethic can at times be a manifestation of impatience. I want this thing to be done, and I want it to be done right, and I want it to be done right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the equivalent of you spend all this time making an amazing cake, and then you put it in the oven to bake, and you're so desperate to eat it that you don't give it enough time in the oven, and you pull it out and you have a shitty cake.
Yes.
Right. So
now I want cake.
Right. And so I actually had an interesting experience where I forced myself just recently to take a month off, which I've never done, and binge watch TV, which is what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And that was super hard for me because there's always a voice in my head when I'm not working that tells me that I suck, and that I'm not serious, and that I'm wasting time, and that I'm resting on my laurels or whatever. And you can't utterly dismiss that voice because that voice does have value. It is possible to be lazy. It is possible to procrastinate. It is possible to not be putting in the hard work that's necessary. But at the same time, you have to be cognizant of taking that cake out too soon. So one of the things I've started doing is I'm against enjoying things in general on principle. So what I've been doing is I'm just watching Kurosawa's Seven Samurai again because there's some specific things about that setting and that plot and those characters that I want to sort of learn from for story ideas that I have. And I'm taking notes. And I'm forcing myself to really deconstruct the story as I watch with a yellow pad on my lap and a pen in my hand. And that way it sort of in my twisted mind counts as work.
I love that. That's great to hear. I have to do the same thing. I mean, I took 3 weeks off over the holidays. I made myself do it, and it was the first time I took that much time off for years. And the first few, I was like, work was on my mind the whole time. I knew that I needed to recharge, and yeah, there was one voice that was like, "You're screwing up," and then I had to kind of trick myself into relaxing based on what I chose, because I was like, okay, I can learn from this thing, and Dishonored 2 will help research for this, and yep.
That's exactly right. But look, the other side of the coin is you don't want to be too nice to yourself. In my experience, the one self-help book that has ever really, really helped me was Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, where he basically attaches misery. He basically lifts up misery and discomfort as the place. So you take a crucible as an analogy. A crucible is super hot, and it's you don't want to be in one. It's rough, but that's where the impurities get burned out of iron, and what you're left with is steel. The Marine Corps has a famous saying, "Pain is weakness leaving the body," and all of that is a lot of macho bullshit. But there is a grain of truth to it, and in my experience, when I've been uncomfortable, really uncomfortable, is when I have leveled up and advanced in my life. It's when I've produced my best work. It's when I was head down and hurting, getting it done. So there is something to be said for taking that step back. But I also want to caution your listeners that you definitely should listen to that voice that tells you you're not working hard enough with a grain of salt, but not too big of a grain.
Totally. Yes, there is. And then with so much with it is like there's such a delicate balance. Like there's the inner critic that you have to listen to, but you also have to keep your inner critic in line so you can still trust your instincts when you do have a good idea or something that you need to carry on, or you need to change something. That it's your gut and not like the little dude on your shoulder that's saying, this
right.
is garbage.
And there's two things there. One is that there's a tendency to lean on other people to either validate or shut up that inner critic by getting other people's opinions, getting beta readers or whatever to give you their opinions. And that's risky. And it's risky for two reasons. The first reason is that it's a great way to shortcut. It's a great way to take the work off of your own shoulders. I'm not going to do the hard work of sitting here, reading my own work, and then sweating and bleeding to figure out if it's good enough. I'm just going to hand it to someone else and let them tell me if it's good enough, and then I don't have to think at all. And that is incredibly insidious and incredibly tempting, and I do it all the time, and everyone I know does it all the time. And in the end, and that you have that wonderful moment then where you'll have two beta readers come to you, and they both look at the exact same aspect of your story, and one loves it and one hates it. And then you're left in this horrible position where you're like, well, which one of them is right? And the answer is, it doesn't friggin' matter. Sit down and figure it out yourself. It's funny. I beta read all of Peter V. Brett's work. For those of your listeners who don't know, Peter B. Brett is the author of The Demon Cycle. The first book in that series is The Worded Man, and it's, full disclosure, he is my best friend, but even if we were deadly enemies, I would still think that he was the second coming of Tolkien. I love his work. I made her read his stuff, and while he solicits my feedback and he wants my feedback, he sure as hell doesn't need my feedback. And he oftentimes will give me the book to read, and then I'll come to him with comments, and he'll be like, "Yeah, I already sent it off to my editor. I decided I was happy with it." And I'm amazed that he has that degree of self-reliance and that degree of confidence in his own judgment, which is something I've never been able to cultivate. What's amazing for me is both Breach Zone and my soon-to-be-published Sieves line, that's my third and my sixth novels, I thought both of them sucked. I thought both of them were disasters.
Really?
And yes, and the sort of consensus from my editors and my fans alike is that Breach Zone is almost the best book, maybe the best book in the first trilogy, and all of my editors and beta readers are telling me that Sieves line is the best book in the second. Which, of course, is really upsetting because now I know I can't rely on my own.
Right? I know. I had a short story commitment, and I was, agonizing and rolling it over and all this stuff, and finally it was just time. It was time to hand it over. It was due, and I handed it over with an apology. And I was like, "I'm sorry. This is what it is." And the editor came back and was like, "Why are you apologizing? This is awesome."
Yeah, I mean, it's both wonderful, it's a huge relief, and it's also really upsetting because it means you don't know. But the second aspect I wanted to warn your listeners about with getting feedback from other writers is that it is absolutely possible, and even likely, for beta readers to be eloquent, persuasive, to give you a well-supported, convincing argument that is absolutely wrong. And if you're like me, and most people who in the arts are incredibly insecure and easily swayed, you gotta watch that, man. So my rule with seeking out beta readers is, and this is going to sound incredibly mercenary, and hopefully it doesn't make people hate me, but of course, there are some trusted exceptions, but basically I only seek writing advice from people whose careers are where I want my career to be.
Well, that totally makes sense.
It's super challenging to find people in that position who are willing to read your stuff, though, because the thing that makes people successful and creative beta reading is the same thing that makes them too busy to beta read.
Yep. So, exciting month for you. You are starring in a new show that is premiering on January 22nd.
Yeah, CBS's Hunted. It's a reality TV show. And look, I wouldn't be on a reality TV show if it was something like Real Housewives or Jersey Shore, right? This is not catty interpersonal relationships. It's an A-team of people in law enforcement and intelligence. And what they've done is they've taken regular people who feel that they can evade us, and those people are restricted to 100,000 square miles in the southeast of the U.S., and then they have to evade us for 28 days. And if they can stay uncaught for 28 days, they will get $250,000. And all I'll say is that we're really, really hard to evade. All of us have made our living either as fugitive hunters. In my case, I was a counterterrorism manhunter before I wound up in cyber.
Oh, wow.
And, that was what I did for years in the intelligence community. And now my brief is cyber, which is actually, in today's interconnected age, a great way to track people down. You got to remember that almost every device you use these days is a computer in one way or another.
Yeah.
Your car is a computer, your phone is a computer, and there's aspects that people just don't think of.
So that's really, you must be really excited though to be a part of it. I watched a couple of the trailers that had come out, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I think it looks like a really cool show. I would think it would be a cool show irrespective of me being on it. But yeah, I mean, look, this is the thing, is that you grow up a nerd, and your big dream in life is to be a published writer, right?
Yep, I'm familiar with that story.
Right, and then you get published, and you think, well, that's it, man, I made it, And then you realize, oh, this isn't a living. This isn't, I mean, it is for some people. And I certainly hope it will be for me one day. But, you know, you sort of get perspective on what your life in media is like, but you're happy with it because this is the thing that you dreamed about. And I never thought in a million years about going on TV. I never had aspirations to act. I never tried out for stuff like this. Is not. And I never thought in a million years that my career in intelligence and law enforcement and the military would be the thing that did it. And
Seriously?
I literally got a call out of the blue at a Christmas party. And I think the first thing I said to the person on the other end of the phone was, fuck you. Like, I totally didn't believe it. Like, I thought I was being punked or something. And thank God they didn't take offense at that. They understood it. And yeah, so now, here's the thing that kills me, Jayme, is that this show, so Survivor was CBS's big reality TV show.
Yep.
I think at its low point, I think it debuted to an audience of 25 million.
Wow.
At its low point, it was around 11 million. And this is the thing that's taking its slump, is the show.
That's intense.
It is intense. And the worst part, I haven't seen it.
No.
I'm not going to know until January 22nd. I'm going to watch the premieres at the same time everybody else does.
That's nuts. I would be a mess. I'd be a ball of nerves. I'm nervous just thinking about it.
Well, you know what? This is the cool thing that being a writer trains you for is you send off these manuscripts, and you know writing is all waiting. It's waiting for people to tell you that your baby is ugly or you know.
Yep.
And so you pour your heart and soul into this manuscript that you've been slaving over for months or even years if it's a novel, and then you send it off to these incredibly busy people who have no particular reason to like you.
Yeah.
And then you sort of stare at your mailbox until your eyes bleed, right?
Yes, you nailed it.
Right. Okay. So you know, and what you get very good at not thinking about it, right? I mean,
I'm working on that part.
Good days and bad days.
Yes,
but you get good at distracting yourself. And the other cool thing with writing is you learn to like create another intense project and get to work on that.
Yes.
Well, the first one is circulate, right?
Definitely.
So these skills have come into play with the TV show big time, which is that I can just, focus on, look, I have 2 more books under contract with Tor. I have, I'm not officially announcing this, but I am hopeful. I'm in contract negotiations and hoping that I will be announcing my first nonfiction military history book.
Awesome.
Very soon. Yes, I'm super psyched about that, but that's a tremendous amount of research. And I know that I'm going to be under the microscope because I'm not a PhD.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to wade into an academic marketplace and be like, hey guys, I know what I'm talking about. And I do. But I'm really just sweating that. And then hopefully I'll be announcing a game based on my books, a board game, war game that will be, hopefully I'll be able to announce that in the coming months.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm super psyched. I mean, again, I don't want to oversell it. Right now, we have contract negotiations, and contracts can always blow up in your face.
Yes.
So this is why I'm not making any official announcements, but I'm hopeful and optimistic that both of these deals will get signed. And the cool thing is that, it freaks me the hell out to think. But my friend texted me, or rather Facebook messaged me and was like, hey man, I just saw you 20 feet high in Times Square on the video billboard there. And I'm like, and the first thing I was like, hey, did you get a picture? And of course he didn't.
Man.
But there's a major pucker factor. I'm like, holy shit, every stranger in Times Square is looking at me. And it really helps to be like, I can't think about that right now. I got books to write and research to do, and I got to take notes on Seven Samurai because this isn't relaxing or joy or fun. This is work.
Yes.
So I've really been. It's so interesting that writing gave me the coping skills that I need to deal with how freaked out I am with this happening.
Well, it definitely, building a writing career, it definitely lends itself to an interesting set of tools.
It does. And I have no idea what will happen with the show. I guess if I had to dream, I certainly really enjoyed doing it. And I love attention. Anyone who's seen me at a con or dealt with me knows that I'm probably the biggest attention hound in the history of time, and I'm super extroverted. So I certainly love the medium, and if it leads to more stuff, that would be fantastic. But the real thing, of course, that I hope is that the increased public profile will draw people to my writing.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get the attention, and what amazes me is after being a pro in this field for 5 years now, I'll still go to science fiction and fantasy cons where I assume everybody knows me, and have people who have not heard of my work and be like, hey, I just checked out your books. And I'm like, where have you been for the last 5 years? I've been all over social media screaming that I have books from the sky. So I'm hoping that this, at a minimum, expands my audience. But I will say this, if it doesn't, I gotta say, man, like, I really have done more in my life than I ever thought I would. I mean, I think all of us kind of grow up the same way, which is getting beat up at school and then playing D&D or Gamma World or whatever in our parents' basements, right? So anyone listening probably knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And then there are those of us as adults who don't really grow out of that. I certainly didn't. For me, it's like Star Wars Armada and other Fantasy Flight games now, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And you don't think that things like this will happen in your life? So I'm sort of kind of bemused and bewildered and kind of thrilled. Like if I die tomorrow, that's fine. Like I got farther than I ever thought I would.
It's weird. I mean, well, just the whole thing of like being a dreamer and, you know, having these aspirations and these ideas and, you know, cobbling them into something, it all seems so far-fetched. And it's a funny thing to talk about, just, you know, especially to people who are not familiar with what it takes. I mean, like, as far as like small talk, when I'm picking up my kids from school, I always like will stop the conversation dead short because I'll be like, you know, what did I do today? I did a lot of researching on blood doping for a story, and then the conversation is over.
Right, of course. Well, the one thing I will point out to your listeners, though, is that every single thing in my life, and I've had amazing things in my life. I've had, you know, years in the intelligence community doing spy work. I've had, you know, years in the military. I've had years in law enforcement. I've had the book deals. I've had now the TV stuff. Absolutely every single one of those things I just mentioned, I never thought I'd do in a million years.
Wow, really?
And that's just absolutely, it's the tip of the iceberg. I never thought I would do any of those things. And by the way, none of those things were happening until they were, right? Everything was a kind of like, oh, this will never happen. This will never happen. And then you get the phone call. Yes, Myke, you know, your book sold. You know, oh, this will never happen. This will never happen. You know, we get the phone call. Yes, Myke, CBS is flying you out. The president wants to meet you. President of CBS, not the president of the United States. At least the president-elect I wouldn't condescend to meet.
Yeah, seriously.
So my point is that you have to be, I can't promise that those things will happen in your life. I couldn't even promise they would happen to me. And Lord knows what little success I've had is no guarantee of any future success. This could all, you know, this could be the last you hear of Myke Cole, right? This could all just sort of fizzle out tomorrow. But what I could control was that I stayed in the fight and I kept working. And look, you know, we all have like 80, 90, 100 years, given advances in medical technology, on this earth. And we know what we want to do. And I would bet that the majority of your listeners, you know, want to be writers or want to be, you know, filmmakers or artists or something in the speculative fiction world.
Yep.
And all you can do is, if you know that that's what you want to do, then you have 80, 90 years to either try to do it and succeed here and there or succeed big, or you can go your 80, 90 years and say you gave it your best and, you know, go on into the void with a glad heart. My point is this really is, if anything will inspire people not to give up, it should be this, because none of this stuff, I am as surprised as anybody else that any of this stuff happened to me. You know the writer Jim Butcher, right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Do you follow him on Twitter?
Yep.
You know what his Twitter handle is?
Not off the top of my head.
Long Shot Author. And like, there's no subtext there.
That's awesome.
He's saying the same thing a hell of a lot more succinctly. Like, Jim Butcher has told me that he wakes up every day shocked at the fact that he's such a megastar as he is in the fantasy world. And I think everybody feels that way to some aspect. So yeah, do not give up. Seriously.
Yes, that is good advice. And it can be, it's discouraging too, because that's just the whole part of like you needing to be in your own corner, and you need, like, I remind myself that I actually love the act of what I'm doing. So, and that is sometimes what you need to focus on when you're frustrated and you feel like wanting to rip your hair out, because it's like, just
it's
zero.
Really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and the odds are not in your favor, right? The arts in general, and writing included, are, incredibly unforgiving and incredibly tilted against you.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate to sound like a motivational poster, but, you have to play to win.
Yeah.
If you don't play, you can't win. And, what are you going to do? I have a tattoo around my forearm, which says "the sea doesn't care about you." And that tattoo, it sounds harsh. It's a Coast Guard.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a Coast Guard Navy saying. And it sounds harsh, but it's actually not intended to be. And the thing is, I say these things with love, is that, I sympathize with how anxiety-ridden and depressing and lonely and often futile feeling writing can be, and any kind of ambition in the arts can be.
Mm-hmm.
But the sea doesn't care, man. And as much as I sympathize and want to give you a hug, that is not going to get you to where you want to be. Only work will do that.
Yes.
So I sort of try to allow myself, and I advise other people to allow themselves a few moments of self-pity and a few moments of self-indulgence. And then you get back to work, not because what you're feeling isn't legit, but because the work is the fastest way to your goal.
Yes. And it's like one of those sayings, like most ones that hold the most weight it's oversaid, but, writers write.
Yeah.
You gotta do it. You gotta get it done.
I am in the process of writing, let me think here, my 8th book under contract. And this is the sequel to the Fractured Girl, which is going to be coming from tour.com. I don't have a publication date yet, probably sometime in 2018, but I just got the ABMs, the Advanced Bound Manuscripts, today.
Nice.
Thanks, yeah. And I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't. Like, I don't know how to write. What I do know how to do, though, is to kind of silence that voice and be like, oh, well. And it's funny because, Jayme, this comes back to what you said in the beginning. You said, I'm going to throw this quote back in your face.
Oh, man.
You can't edit a blank page. You said that.
Yes.
And you said you have to get it out there. All right. And this is the exact same tactic that I use. I don't know how to write, but I know I have 2 books that I didn't know how to write that people are telling me are good. So I'm just going to have faith and, keep tapping the keys.
Definitely. That's good. It is tough. And like, I think you said this a little bit earlier in the conversation is, it's, there's good days and bad days. And there's, there are some days where, I can just feel just on top of my game. And then there's other days where it's just like, all right, this sucks. Let's move on. Let's do something else.
And you have to be thinking about the long game. It's the marathon, not the sprint. It's funny.
Definitely. That's great.
Yeah. A good analogy of this is, it was a guy I knew in my climbing gym back in Arlington. And he had been a Marine EOD guy. That's explosive ordnance disposal. And what the Mustadin is Arabic for evildoer. I don't call him Mujahideen. What they did back then was they used to double tap, which is they would set a primary charge, blow it up, time how long it would take for EOD to respond, and then once they had that time down, they would have a secondary charge that they would bury underneath the first one. So then that would be time to detonate when EOD was standing on it, and that way wasn't command detonated, it was timed, so they wouldn't even have to be there, and they were guaranteed to kill the EOD guys who responded. So that's what happened to this guy. He was double tapped. He was standing right over a 107 artillery round when it went off.
Oh, wow.
And it took his left arm off below the elbow, and he looked like the Thing from Fantastic Four. He was just interlaced with scars, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Making the step across the skin. He had a glass eye. So he was permanently changed by this explosion physically, you know? And he was the most upbeat, laughing, cheerful, positive human being I've ever met in my life. He rigged a carbon graphite prosthetic with a climbing axe to replace that arm.
Wow.
Lost arm. And he was a better indoor climber than I was. And he was a total womanizer, despite his injuries, because he was such a joy to be around that women loved him.
Wow.
You know, he dated, he was and I just admired the hell out of him. And one time, we weren't very close, so one time I kind of got the guts up to talk to him about it. We were sitting, when you climb, you spend a lot of time sitting below the climbing problems, looking up at them, you know, kind of planning your next attack. And I said to him, you know, man, you are so upbeat, you are so, you know, positive all the time, and all I can think of is if I was in your situation, I would be so bitter and angry. You know, this wasn't your fault, and, you know, all you were trying to do was be a good person and lead a good life, and look what happened. And how are you so happy? And he looked at me, and I kind of like, I said that and then thought, oh shit, you know, this is going to piss him off, right? But he just kind of laughed, and he looked at me and he said, Mike, he goes, you see me at the climbing gym, you know, 2-3 times a week for an hour. You don't see the rest of my life. He goes, I have plenty of days and parts of days where I am bitter and angry. And, you know, this is not, my existence is not monolithic. I just don't do it in front of you and in the middle of this public place because it's a public place and I don't know you very well. And I remember feeling so gobsmacked and amazed, because I just didn't think of that. That was the way he always was. And it reminded me of something my brother told me, which I've never forgotten, which is don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. But
I love that.
Yeah, to loop this back to the writing conversation, it's just that. It's that this idea of a long game and of giving yourself permission to have those bad days.
Yeah. And
to remember that you're not monolithic. And also not to look at people that you see as successful, right? You know, don't look at Neil Gaiman and John Scalzi and, Naomi Novik and Robin Hobb and think, what am I doing wrong? You know, these people are so successful. You know, look at them and remember that they have bad days. They really do. And you just don't see it because you're not that close to them.
Yes, that is very true. And and that comes to like perspective is, you know, one of the most, you know, it's a superpower right there.
Yeah, and one I sadly lack when I'm down in it, man, I'm down in it. Poor Pete. If you ever interview Peter B. Brett, you can ask him. He spends way too much time on the phone with me, talking me off the ledges.
Yeah, well, my husband's full-time job is telling me to breathe through it. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, there's, you know, good days and bad days, and like sometimes I'm on it and I'm feeling good and I'm able to take my perspective and be like, okay, I'm powering through it, I'm doing this. I don't have the luxury of feeling sorry for myself because there's, you know, there's shit I gotta do. And then there's other days where I'm just like, oh, this is just awful. And, you know, it's weird. I mean, it's a weird way to spend your time. You know, 8 hours go by and it's like, okay, everything is a mess and I don't know when this needs to happen or this needs to happen, but I did one hell of a backstory here.
and so much of it is faith. It really is.
Yes.
It's so funny. I don't know if you're religious. I'm not a religious person.
I'm not either. I was raised very Catholic, but I'm not anymore.
I mean, I'm Jewish. I'm Jewish. I don't. But that for me is more of a cultural identity. It has very little to do with the actual religious part of it. But it's funny that when you put so much faith, like I sort of think of myself as a Stoic, which is that and I mean that in the ancient sense of the word. I prize reason above all else, and sort of like look at faith with disdain. I only believe what I can see. I believe in science. I don't believe in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny or the power of prayer. But there is something in faith, and I don't mean the metaphysical, praying to God or anything like that. What I mean is the ability to go against your own instincts that is fueled by reason. Hey, this goal of being a writer, the odds are so long. Mm-hmm. They're about as long as me being struck by lightning. They're about as long as me being struck by lightning while being attacked by a shark at the same time. Yep. What kind of crazy person would devote countless hours, give up nights and weekends and precious time on this thankless task where the high, almost guaranteed odds are that you will not see the level of success that you're aiming for? Who would do that? And of course, the answer is a stupid person, right? And Stephen Pressfield, who's this guy who wrote The War of Art, one of my favorite writers, said one of his advice slogans is "Write stupid, write stupid."
I love that,
and that's what he means. Have that faith. Yep, this is crazy, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yep.
Because, and this is a quote from my second novel, because sometimes you win.
Yes. Well, I know. I'm always thankful for how horribly stubborn of a person that I am. And that, like, I'm this natural, and I was always like this, even as a kid. You tell me no or not to do something, and that is going to be the one thing that I'm going to do.
Yeah, we're birds of a feather. My favorite quote is, "Go ahead, tell me what I can't do."
Yes. That's a good one.
Yeah. I definitely think we're ideologically aligned on this.
I think the Y's in our name.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I liked it because, like, when I was in my teen years and I wanted to be extra cool, I dropped the me and I was just Jay, and I really like that.
My favorite quote is, "There is no I in team, and there is no I in Myke."
Oh no! You need that on a mug. Myke, can you tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter and all that stuff?
Yeah, of course. So I'm easy to find because my name is Myke Cole, all the Y, MYKECOLE, on Twitter at Myke Cole, on Facebook at facebook.com/Myke Cole, and my website is MykeCole.com.
Awesome. And thanks so much for coming on the show, Myke.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that wraps it up for this week. It was awesome having Myke Cole on the show. Be sure to check out his books and Hunted, and throw him some love on Twitter. And yes, as far as Twitter, you know where to find me, at me Bedingfield or at Too Many Words Pod, and same place for Facebook. And for all my stuff, my words, my projects and this and that, you can go to JaymeBedingfield.com, and be sure to tune in next week. I'll be talking to Kat Howard.